Okay. So, okay. How about that one?
Just sit there and click. Oh, there it is. Don't, it's not playing again.
That's all right, I have it memorized.
There you go.
Okay, there we are. So in the beginning, working with this tool, which is a great tool, I should back up. I've worked with Rational, I've worked with Mega, I've worked with a number of different UML modeling tools and extensions of that or whatever. And the whole goal really has been not to just go in and do the work, but let's try to organize this thing so that it's going to help the specific environment, the type of work that you're trying to do. When you're in an insurance company, you want to talk about claims and so forth. If you're in the auto distribution center, type of work or whatever. Of course, it's a totally different domain. So let me see where we are. Oh, you're going to just
You're
tap
all
it
right
for
with
me?
that? Because I'll get out of your way.
Okay. So in the beginning, basically, we had a whole lot of people who were a whole lot of models, and in particular with the EA. Actually, I should first ask, how many people in the room are creating models for their work? Okay, excellent, fine. I don't mean this to be tool specific. You will see stuff in references to EA. And the main reason behind that, EA being Enterprise Architecture or Sparx EA, the main reason behind that is there's kind of been a convergence of things. I've had a number of clients who independently had chosen EA as their tool. And they have an open framework that you can do things to develop and make it work more specifically for you. And basically, that's the kind of leverage that I take when I'm working with my clients. Whatever. So we used to have tons of EAP files, as you may know. With Rational, you had tons of XML files. There was no central thing that really allowed everybody to pull it all together. So EA did the right thing. They built it on top of a SQL repository. You can put it in a SQL server or one of those, and now you have something that's centrally located. So it's becoming a corporate asset. But even though you may have everybody working together in that same repository, everybody's doing it in a different way. So you need to be able to control that. Get a handle on it. Plus, since it's shared, you've got business people looking at technology stuff, and you don't want them deleting that, doing things like that. So the models are corporate assets. We need to protect them. We've got non-IT professionals becoming involved. We've got a lot of business people, SMEs, who are actually getting involved, rolling up their sleeves. They're working with the business innovation model, business capability model, all the requirements and so forth. So we've got a lot of hands getting into this thing. There are a lot of industry standards like the two that I just mentioned, but are they executable as far as in your model is concerned? These are all things that we kind of need, but we don't necessarily have. Right? And we really need to make sure that the time and the expense that we put into these models is going to give us some kind of a return. So, it didn't go anywhere, did it? Which one am I supposed to be hitting here? I'm hitting the down arrow, I'm hitting the space. How about page down?
So I think you've got to click back in here.
Oh, just click on this?
I think, I don't know where the cursor's gone.
How about when you're in it?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So some of the things that we want to be concerned about, or we have to be concerned about, that shared environment that I said, so that everybody's working together instead of you have all these little isolated models and so forth. Now, adherence to the modeling standards, how can we do that? There's a concept that the UML founders put together called profiles, which are what let us extend UML. They didn't know everything, so they made it so that we could add everything. And unfortunately, some people do add everything, and then you're back to the hodgepodge. Anyway, so we need to get these standards put together, and we do them within the profiles. But having the profile is not enough. You need to make sure everybody out there has them. And back in the States, we're working with companies that are doing like 100 modelers. So it's imperative that you keep them all up to date with what you're doing. The enforcement of the rules, that's a really big thing. What are you allowed to do in a model? So would you connect a business capability to a server? Probably not, it doesn't make sense. So typically a profile will give you things you can do, but it won't tell you what you can't do with that stuff. And we need to get that kind of thing in there as well. Control-based, control over what we want to do. EA gives you package level control and so forth, but we want to take it farther. We want to get user roles involved so that we can control what the user can do. And even at the experience level and the authority level, there are certain things that you would let somebody do, like take a stereotype and change it throughout the model, change 5,000 of them, but you wouldn't let anybody just do that, Model profile to model synchronization is another issue. If you've got a number of models that have been created by this profile, and I want to stop for a second because I've used the term profile a number of times. Does anybody have a question about what a profile is? Okay, good. All right, so keeping the profile up to date, you're going to learn, you're going to change it, add things to it, take things away. Now you have models that are sitting out there that have stereotypes and tags and all this stuff, things that are no longer pertinent to your meta model. So you want to make sure that you can synchronize so those models don't become obsolete and no longer viable for you. Another thing that we like to look at is model-driven tasks. It's nice to have that profile to say, okay, I can take this thing from the toolbox and put it on here, and I can draw a line into empty space, and it'll tell me here are the things that I can have. That's just the beginning of what you can do. With the model-driven thing, it's going to take the profile and start giving you answers to questions depending upon what's in the profile or the meta model. And we'll get to that. No. Where is it supposed to be?
I've just got the ones up there. If you just click the pad, it should spawn.
Okay. All right, so I kind of alluded to this already. Profile-assisted modeling, that's basically where the profile says, okay, here are your toolboxes, right? And you can put anything that you want onto this diagram. You can get another toolbox from the business architecture and put them on there. You can put, servers on there, whatever. But at least you're given the things that are in the domain. You're talking about claims. You're talking about accounts. You're not talking about classes and components and so forth. Profile controlled is going to say, well, no, you really shouldn't do that here. And then the profile driven is where it says, I need to do this. I have this thing on this end, and I want to connect it to something else. What are the things out there that I can connect it to? And we'll show you that. Okay, so let's see. Look, all right, so I know I'm an American, but really. What?
All I'm doing is clicking either the button.
Okay, all right. Now, you know what? I've been working on a Mac where you have to you push the mouse pad until it clicks. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so profile-assisted modeling. This provides, let's say, an inventory of possibilities. Like in Sparx in particular, but most modeling tools. You can develop via your meta model what are the different types over there. So those are where your claims would be and so forth. Your toolboxes, your diagram types. A diagram type is essentially a viewpoint. Viewpoints go all the way back to RMODP back in the early 90s. And then into RUP and into TOGAF and Archimate and so forth. Viewpoint basically is one way of looking into the model for a specific purpose and for a specific target audience or whatever, right? Well, that's what our diagram types are basically. Let's see. So, well, that's a little bit about what EA can do and cannot. I'm not going to worry about that. So what we want to be able to do is create some of these things, these profiles and so forth, in a very easy manner, and then get really clever, do a little bit of programming, and do some stuff with it. Okay. Thank you. So with the profile-assisted modeling, like I said, it's going to give you the suggestions. So you can't really see this when you get a handout, from this, or you see the video, you might be able to. But basically, this is from the business motivation model. We have missions, vision, goals, strategy, objective, dimensions, tactic categories, that's what it is, sub-tactics and so forth. And when you have one of these things, the assisted part of it is if I want to draw a connection from this to this, it'll pop up and say, these are the kinds of connections you can have. It's a stereotype on the connector, it gives you the tag values, and all that kind of thing. You can even just draw out an empty space and it'll say, oh, you want one of these out there. So that's the assisted part of it. Over on the right-hand side, that's just the business motivation model, the enterprise reference model that we developed, where we've got things like proposed ABBs, proposed SBBs, and so forth. I'll circle back to them because there's a kind of clever way of handling those, their promotion from proposed to actually accepted. Okay. Thank you. With the profile controlled, what we've done is to say, this diagram type is a business architecture, in the business architecture view. And we've defined what tools we want to use on that particular diagram. So if you try to create something that's not in its own toolbox, it's going to say, no, that doesn't belong here. So that's where you're controlling what the modeler can do to take them down the right path. Rather than going back and reviewing things after the fact, what we want to do is make sure that it's right the first time. And in fact, we take it to a two-level step in this. One, can you create a new element on this thing? Okay, maybe you can't. But maybe you should be able to drag one on and then make some connections to it. Like if you're doing what we call a vertical slice or a business realization diagram, you're basically showing what are all the architectural elements that are required in order to satisfy a particular business process. So there you would have activities. Activities may come down to ABBs. ABBs are satisfied by SBBs, and so on. You have this tree of things. So you do want to be able to pull all those different things on there so you can define what kinds of things we want on it, as well as what kind of things that the person should be able to create. Let's see. Yeah, this is the third level, the profile-driven modeling. Have you ever had an element on a diagram and you needed to draw a connector to another element and you had to go find that element? If you have a large model, that can be rather time-consuming and painful, in fact, actually. So with the with the profile-driven modeling, basically what we're talking about is, okay, I have a business motivation model thing, right? I have it on the diagram, and I want to know what are the kinds of relationships it can have. Well, the profile will tell me that. So I get a list of the different relationships it can have and what can be on the other end, and I say, I want that one. And it comes back and says, here are all the things in the model that you can connect to. So instead of chasing the stuff down, or even worse, getting the wrong thing, it's going to help you out and give you the solutions or whatever. So those are the three levels that we try to attain when we put together a modeling environment. Okay. This is just a simple example. In this particular case, what we're doing is a promotion process. And the idea is, this is what I was talking about before, about the proposed ABBs and the proposed SBBs and so forth. So we don't let anybody create an architectural building block in the model. We don't let them create a solution building block in the model. Things have to get approved before they become real. So what we do is create proposed SBBs and proposed ABBs. And they're in a certain place. They might be in a capability uplift package where we're looking at all the things that we think that we're going to need in order to move this capability forward, right? So we've got these guys and everybody says, yes, this is the way we want to go. So at that point, what we want to do is promote them. So the concept is, if we're going to promote an SBB, proposed SBB to an SBB, what are the things that we're changing? Well, one, we're changing its type, which we just do over there on the left. We can change its status to approved, whatever the case may be. You can put in different tag values, change tag values, and so forth, and click the button and 100 of them, and you can even have them moved over into a new package where the bona fide SBBs are supposed to exist or whatever. So that's the concept of the profile driven. It makes decisions for you, and when you've got those 100 people banging away in there, it's not like one guy's got this idea, he's going to do it this way, and another one's going to do it that way, so forth. Okay. Thank you. So to be a little bit more specific about what we have and what we're dealing with, the Metamodel itself is basically made up of object types, and those are the things that become your stereotypes. They're in the toolbox, and you can drag them onto your diagram. The connector types, of course, are your links. Your tag values are the extra information that you want to know. Maybe you have a deployment date, a planned deployment date, an actual deployment date, and so forth. And that should automatically be populated every time you create one of these things. So that's in the profile and the Metamodel. And then what relationships you can have, and that's where, a relationship basically being two endpoints and the connector. And then, of course, all the information about the endpoints, all the tag values and everything else, and the same thing that you can have on the connector. That's the Metamodel. And then to organize how we look at the Metamodel, then we have the diagram types along with their toolboxes. As I said before, diagram type is basically a UML type of diagram, like an activity diagram versus a structure diagram, composite diagram, activity, I said that, sequence diagram, and so forth. And then the toolbox gives you the things that you're going to work with on there. That's basically your viewpoint. The things that we want to control our models with, though, beyond this, we want to have users. We want to be able to assign user roles to them so that we can box in a business architect, box in a solution architect, so that they're not wandering around and accidentally making changes, anywhere else in the model. Relationship enforcement. Again, we don't want to just be throwing things together. There has to be a purpose for them to come together like that. Integration with other profiles. Basically, we build a big profile that has all of the various architectural layers and so forth in there. But there are ones that you can already get, like there's the BPMN 2.0, which is available. So we link that together, and you're going to be able to start working with that as well. Model event processing. This is where that kind of an open architecture that Sparx gives you, and a number of them do offer, is that you can capture events that happen when you're doing things. Like when you drop something from the toolbox onto a diagram, that's a new element event. You can capture that and decide what to do. So that's all built into the tool. So if you have some clever programmers, you can use that API to say, okay, you're this role, but you shouldn't be doing that, so I'm not going to let you do it. You shouldn't be deleting one of these things because that's not in your domain or whatever. And then the profile and the model alignment things that I was talking about before, that's where when we have something that we call a business application, and we got tired of typing in business application over and over, so we go into the profile and change it to business app. Now we need to go back into the model and change all the business applications to business apps, whatever. Okay, go ahead. So there's a design time and the runtime. The design time, of course, is when you're creating the Metamodel. And I have been very fortunate to have worked with a number of really good Metamodelers. I hope I've learned from them, but that's really where the whole thing starts. Because that's where you're going to have the carrot and the stick. You have the carrot because here are the things that you need to do, and then the stick says, no, you can't do that because it's not one of the things you can do. The runtime is then basically where your hundreds of modelers are doing this stuff, and then the profile is going to be guarding them. So go ahead. Has anybody here tried to create a profile in anything, let alone enterprise architect? In order to do it, you typically have to create hundreds of elements on scores of diagrams with thousands of connectors or whatever. It's a hodgepodge. So basically what we've done is all those things that you saw on the previous page, the object types and so forth, these each become a tab in a dialog. So it's just a matter of picking from lists and putting it all together. Go ahead. This is getting a little bit more product specific, and that's not really the intent here. This was an example of doing the synchronization. It actually looks at the model and says, oh, here are some things in the model that don't match, no longer match what are in the profile. Everything that's in the model has a key to it, which we can map back to the profile. And that way we can do the updates within the model at any time. Okay. Now, here's the management side of things that you really need to work on. Like I said, we want to make sure everybody's working on the same profile. So we want to have the availability of putting it out on a network drive, putting it into a URI or a SharePoint or something like that, and then have an automated process, that startup that goes out, finds that thing, pulls it down to the local drive, and then the whole thing starts up using the most recent version of it. Yeah, that's good. Now, the profile model coordination, let's see, what's this slide about? Task designed to simplify the modeling process, leverage the profile to reduce the number of options. That's basically really leading you down the path, and control the choices. We've kind of covered that. This is getting into some of the very specific requirements that people have asked for as we develop these things. And again, like I said, it's a matter of developing the profile, but then also extending the models, the tool's capabilities, through the event processing and through creating dialogues that you can then call the API, and make the changes to. So to give you a feel for some of the things that people have asked for. Enhanced element management. How many times have you created an element only to find out it was already there? Yeah, really. How many of, what do I want to say, the Acme claims processor do you think you have in your model out there or whatever, So one of the number one things is we got to get a handle on this. So what we've done is you create an element and you give it a name and a UML type, and you'll immediately see, there are 3 of them out there. You can see where they are.